Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Windsor's jail ran well over capacity last year, and some fear that may be the new normal. Plus, a Windsor woman was awarded thousands of dollars from her landlord, but she says the process makes it impossible to get paid. And we check in with the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit before March break as the number of measles cases increases across Canada. New provincial numbers show there were more inmates than space available at Windsor's Southwest Detention Centre last year. Some who work directly with prisoners fear overcrowding at facilities like this has become the status quo. The CBC's Jacob Barker has more.
It seems like the rule, not the exception.
It's nothing new for criminal defense lawyer Bobby Russin to hear stories from inmates about overcrowding and frequent lockdowns at Windsor's Southwest Detention Centre.
It's sad because it's become their reality. So they do tell us about it, but sooner or later when things aren't done about it, they stop sounding off about it, and it's sad that it becomes their new normal, right?
The Windsor jail ran at 129% capacity last year. It housed 337 inmates while only having room for 262. That's according to numbers obtained by the Canadian Press through a Freedom of Information request. When asked about those numbers, Ontario's Ministry of the Solicitor General told CBC it recognizes the need for modernization in corrections and is investing $500 million for new staff and infrastructure projects, but it made no mention of improvements coming to Windsor. In recent years, CBC Windsor has reported on issues with staffing at the facility, crowded cells with inmates sleeping on the ground, and frequent lockdowns.
It's not like the Southwest Detention Centre gets a 29% boost in staff. And really, it's more than 29% more because the crowding has a compounding effect. It makes your job more stressful. It makes everything more difficult.
Russin said part of the blame lies with Crown prosecutors and the bail conditions they set. The province says nearly 80% of those in such facilities around the province are waiting for trial, sometimes for months or even years.
There's no remedy for that. You don't get those days back.
The Ministry of the Attorney General has not responded to our request for comment about these issues with the court system. Alicia Sleeman works with recently released inmates, helping them integrate back into society. She says overcrowding means they are missing an opportunity for reform while behind bars.
I'm noticing that there definitely is a lack of resource allocation in the prisons. They're not getting proper healthcare, education, rehabilitation, because things are just so overcrowded.
She says that a lot of people she deals with have nonviolent offenses, and rehabilitation they have done with her works.
They need help, and when somewhere is overcrowded like that, it's almost impossible to get proper help.
Jacob Barker, CBC News, Windsor.
A Windsor tenant won more than $16,000 from her former landlord, but now she worries she might never get it. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa reports.
The actual order itself states the
order in Lisa Lum's hands says her previous landlord owes her thousands of dollars. That decision is from the Landlord and Tenant Board, which found Lum was evicted in bad faith. But weeks after the payment deadline, she still hasn't received the money she's owed.
complete frustration. It's roadblocks everywhere.
Lum filed applications with the Landlord and Tenant Board in 2022. That was after she had been evicted twice from the same property. Both times, her landlord had said that he planned to move into the house, but never did. And weeks after pushing her out of the property altogether, he put the home up for sale. Lum's case was heard this past January, about 2 years after filing.
The board sided with Lum and ordered the landlord to pay a $5,000 administrative fine to the board and more than $16,000 to Lum.
I expected that the process was done.
But if she wants to get paid, the process is far from over. The board doesn't enforce its orders, so Lum needs to file this in a small claims court. But in order to serve her landlord, she needs his address, which she doesn't have. The landlord didn't respond to a request for comment from CBC News. Lum's paralegal suggested that she hire a private investigator or go to a collection agency.
To garnish like a bank account or wages, which is probably a great way to go on this, you need to find them, and that's the problem. It costs money to hire someone to try to locate someone.
Usually when a tenant is successful and endures such a long process, it's only natural to assume that they're going to obtain a reward right away.
But that's not always the case. Between January 2020 and September 2023, the board issued 13 fines to landlords for bad faith evictions. As of November 2023, only 4 landlords had paid.
With this judgment, this was to give me closure. And I don't have closure.
Lum wants to see the landlord and tenant board process be easier and quicker to navigate, and for there to be actual consequences for bad actors. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Members of an advocacy group held a rally in front of MPP Andrew Dowie's office today, calling for the province to fund Windsor's Safe Point location. That's the now closed supervised consumption and treatment site in downtown Windsor.
Be assured, I have taken your message to the health minister, to the mental health and addictions minister, to the premier directly, and to my entire caucus. We've had this conversation about how important this facility is.
The province halted plans to fund the injection site last August. It put all sites under review after an incident in Toronto. Windsor's location closed on January 1st, but advocates say it must reopen in order to help save lives.
SafePoint is offering much needed healthcare services to our community members, some of our most vulnerable community members, and healthcare is supposed to be a freely accessible service in Ontario for all Ontarians. So SafePoint is healthcare. It needs funding.
As March break begins, the Public Health Unit wants you to be cautious of the measles as the number of cases increases across Canada. Windsor had 1 confirmed case of the measles back in January. The health unit says it's pleased there hasn't been another, but they say people need to be vigilant on getting their vaccines. Measles was declared eliminated in Canada in 1998. Why are we seeing this outbreak in measles now?
Now, as a result of COVID and lack of access elsewhere in Europe and developing countries, in the US, kids hasn't receive the vaccination that they needed, so they are susceptible. We see outbreaks of measles outside of Canada, and when we travel outside, if we are not completely vaccinated, we can contract the disease and bring it back in Canada and spread among our community. Misinformation, disinformation have a very significant effect on hesitancy. Also, trust in public health and all of the things that we do has eroded. So I think that these are other contributing factors.
What does the situation here in Windsor look like in regards to immunization records?
90% vaccination. It's better than some of other health units. It's not perfect because we need 95% of vaccination to prevent outbreaks in our schools, in our community. I'm concerned about that. That 5% provide opportunity for the disease to create outbreak. But even 95% make me concerned, because what about those 5% of kids who are unvaccinated? They can suffer from complications, pneumonia, ended up into a hospital, neurological damage for the life. So I think that's concerning. This is a very safe vaccine, very effective vaccine, probably one of the most effective vaccines that we have. With 2 doses, you are 97% to 99% protected from the disease.
You know, we've talked a lot about children, but what's your advice for adults?
This is important for them to check their vaccination. This is an opportunity to check your vaccination, go to your healthcare provider, check your record. If you need additional dose of vaccine, get it, and then safely travel to your destination.
OPP officers in Leamington are looking for 3 people they say are wanted for a home invasion. This is a photo of one of the suspects. On February 24th, just before 6 p.m., police say they got a 911 call to a home on Talbot Street West in Leamington. Police say 3 people forced their way in and assaulted 2 people inside. Police say the suspects fled the scene in a white 4-door Ram truck. The words "Green Landscaping Plus" appear on the side door. Anyone with information is asked to call Essex County OPP. A local woman has sparked a challenging conversation to mark International Women's Day. Fartumo Cusco's daughter, Sarha, was killed last May in Windsor. Her estranged husband was charged with first-degree murder and is awaiting trial. Tonight, Cusco is hosting a virtual roundtable discussion to find ways to move along with recommendations that came out of the provincial inquest after a triple homicide in Ottawa. She spoke with Windsor Morning earlier today.
Holding this round table, not to really find the answers, but start the discussion of where do we go from here. There was a list of 84 items in that inquest report, and all of them are really excellent recommendations, but some of them require more depth, some of them require higher level of the government, some of them require greater monetary capital. So I thought, what can we as people in our community, what can we do? What could be our next step? I'm just trying to do my small part, not to grieve in private, even though that would have been easier, but to grieve in public and share my pain and hopefully bring other people on board.
A major construction project is set to begin Monday on the city's east end. A section of Jefferson Boulevard will be shut down in both directions until November. The section between Coronation Street and South National is being closed to through traffic for sewer, water, and gas work. The project will cost around $6 million. The executive director of engineering says extensive work needs to be done, which is why it will take 8 months to complete. The city is telling motorists to avoid the area if they can, but residents in the work zone will still be able to access their homes.
And it's going to involve full sewer replacement. So we're going to be separating what is an existing combined sewer there into separate sanitary and storm sewer. And that's a project that originated from our sewer master plan to address flooding in the area. So it's a really important priority for us. But we've also, we always try to team up with other utilities when we do this work. So we've got water main included on this project as well as Enbridge gas main.
Statistics Canada says the employment rate fell slightly last month, even as the economy saw a net job increase of 41,000. High population growth outpaced the job gains in February, pushing up the unemployment rate to 5.8%. Alberta and Nova Scotia experienced the biggest increases. Manitoba registered a decline. The rest of the country saw little change. Another statistic, though, suggests fewer jobs overall. The proportion of employed Canadians over 15 has gone down for 5 straight months. It's no joke for some local comedians. Just for Laughs announced this week the annual festival in Montreal has been canceled, and with it, a special comedy showcase in Windsor. Local comedians were set to perform here in Windsor for a Just for Laughs talent scout later this month. Some of them say it's a big loss, as many now famous comedians got their start through the program.
A little disappointed, you know, obviously, like it was kind of our one big leap to stardom of sorts, and now it's all dash. So
Yeah.
what can you do?
We worked really hard on it, and it's been pretty hard. Like I did cry. I'm not ashamed of it. Like, did you cry?
No, I'm
No?
more pessimistic, and until it was like officially going to happen, I still didn't believe it was going to happen.
Bit of a dreary day, but it didn't dampen the spirit of International Women's Day. Your weekend weather forecast coming up after the break. Nick DiPaolo is here now to give us that weekend weather forecast.
Now, we did have a bit of rain in the middle of our day today, and that rain is expected to last all the way through to about Sunday. But then when that rain switches into flurries, the good news is it's not going to last long. And when we do look ahead at what's expected for the week, well, we got warm days ahead, double-digit days even, which will be coming our way. Weather which will be good enough to get out there and play golf, tennis, even go for a run without any complaints. Now, taking a look at what's happening over our area for the next couple of hours, going to take a step to the side here. We're seeing that rain is going to be coming in when it's continuation through the overnight, and as it lasts all the way through until about halfway through the day on Saturday. Now, what we notice here is in that little bit of break, this is where we're going to be expecting a bit of a change in system, as in halfway through the afternoon on Saturday, this is where the temperatures will be starting to drop. Now, as the temperatures start to drop, we're going to notice that another thing that'll be entering our area outside of the cold air, and that's going to be something in the form of flurries. Now, we're expecting those flurries right here to begin closer to around 10 o'clock on Saturday, and they're going to last all the way through into about your Sunday. But we're talking about some good news here, and that good news which is in store is once we get rid of all of that rain, once we get rid of all of that precipitation, well, we're going to be having some more sunshine that's going to be coming our way. Now, we're talking about snowfall amounts. I'm going to take a step to this side and we're looking at the snowfall totals. Well, the snowfall totals just going to be trace amounts of snow that's going to fall, not a big amount of snow. And the same thing when it comes to the rainfall. The rainfall that Windsor is going to be expecting, we know that there are special weather statements saying close to 40 millimeters in certain regions. Well, a lot of those regions are expecting closer to 40 are more over here north of the GTA, more northeast of the Windsor region. Now, taking a look at some long-range temperatures, well, the good news is when it comes to the long range, here's what we're expecting for your Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We're expecting some precipitation on Saturday, as well as a bit of flurries on Sunday. But when it comes to your Monday, when it comes to your Tuesday, and your Wednesday, it's the return to double-digit temperatures. Now, happy International Women's Day to all, and I hope we enjoy the weather once Monday starts, of course. Over to you, Meg.
Well, it's time to check in with Josiah Sinanen in our Week's End segment, where we talk about all the fun and cool things happening in our community. I understand there's an interesting event happening this weekend.
That's right. Well, first off, Meg, happy International Women's Day to you.
Thank you very much.
And I do have a great story that kind of ties into that. We're talking about a play called Vitals that opens tonight at the Shadowbox Theatre. It follows a paramedic named Anna, who the audience experiences as she works through a series of emergency calls. And we get to watch as she navigates how those people's emergencies start to impact her. And as I mentioned, Meg, it's also a completely a one-woman show, so there's only one actress on the stage at all times.
This sounds riveting, but what caught your interest about this?
I think the messaging really got me here, Meg. The play is written by a Canadian playwright named Rosamund Small, and it's really tied to this idea that the people around us who we rely on also sometimes need help themselves. And Meg, I actually spoke to that lead actress. Her name is Mary Grace Weir. She's a Windsorite. She was on Afternoon Drive yesterday, and she shared with me how this play really touches on some important insights into mental health.
Anna, the main character, is a paramedic in Toronto, and she is going through life trying to do her best to be in control of things. She's a person who does not like when things are inefficient. She doesn't really like when she's uncertain about things. She loves certainty, but her job is full of uncertainty. The play opens really with the line, "You don't know what a call is going to be like until you get there." So that already sets the scene that you never really know what to expect. So she has to deal with that day after day after day. And sometimes what she's confronted with is stuff that's horrific. So it's about her finding a way of coping with that. And she tries to do it on her own, and you see increasingly that that's not really possible.
Now, something interesting about Mary Grace's journey into learning her character, Meg, is that she didn't actually know any EMS workers personally before this.
So if she didn't know any EMS workers, how was she able to prepare for this role?
Yeah, there's a bit of a story there, Meg. So this is a play that's been on her mind for a long time. She first heard about it through a course at the University of Windsor that her daughter was taking, and she meant to put it on during the pandemic as a streamable way to show this one-woman show. She was really inspired at the time by frontline EMS workers she would see on during this period. And you might remember, Meg, those EMS workers wearing those goggles that made those impressions on their faces. That really stuck with her.
And did she end up hearing from any of the paramedics?
Yeah, so this is really neat, and a really cool thing about these performances responses. So Mary Grace Weir has invited some of our local Essex Windsor paramedics to be in attendance for a talkback session after the shows. And that happened because the only other time she did actually perform this play was at the university for her daughter's class, where she offered to perform it. Little did she know, former EMS Chief Bruce Crowder was there, and he told her that he felt so seen from her performance.
Okay, so what are the details if we want to see this?
Yeah, well, Meg, I'm going to be there tonight at 8 p.m. for the opening show, so if you want to catch me, I'll be there. It starts at 8 p.m. at Shadowbox Theatre. You can get your tickets at the door. And Meg, Mary Grace Weir has decided the funds will support our local paramedics with a peer support program for their mental health. So a great local cause and definitely something worth checking out. And if you miss it this weekend, it's also on again next weekend.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Josiah. We always look forward to these segments. Coming up, International Women's Day isn't just about celebrating accomplishments. It's also about supporting others. We have that story after the break. Today is International Women's Day, and as we recognize the global fight for gender equality, advocates are calling on the federal government to do more to support thousands of migrant care workers, most of whom are women. As Patrick Swadden explains, many of those workers are worried they may become undocumented or face deportation.
And I am a former care worker.
On a day focused on women's rights, a group with a simple demand.
We are here to call on Prime Minister Trudeau to give all migrant care workers in Canada permanent resident status.
The Migrant Workers Alliance for Change says getting PR is a punishing task at best for thousands of migrant care workers who take care of children, the sick, and elderly.
They must fulfill impossible requirements even after they have worked for more than 12 months. You don't have to pay.
Arlene Gillian is from the Philippines, working in Canada since 2019, but says she can't get her education accredited in Canada and faces grueling hours as a care worker.
My hair started falling off, and it caused me depression.
Migrant workers won the right to study in 2023, but the Alliance says many are unable to pay high international tuition fees or study while working full-time.
I can't prepare, I can't focus. I needed preparation to help myself for the test day.
Meanwhile, the required English test score for the care worker programs is level 5, exceeding even the requirement for Canadian citizenship. Mary Cruz has taken the test 7 times at $350 for each try.
I can communicate clearly with my employers and everyone else. You can ask them.
But Cruz says this still isn't enough.
It has been more than 6 years and I still not able to apply for permanent residence.
Meanwhile, with any break taken from the required 12 months of work, the experience expires and workers must start work anew. And now the home child care provider and home support worker pilots, 2 programs started in 2019, are set to expire in 3 months, leaving many in limbo.
Workers have no idea what is going to happen after that. The announcement hasn't been made.
The Alliance says thousands of care workers have now become undocumented and are worried about deportation. They're calling on the government to regularize undocumented workers and provide a path to permanent residency through an interim program without the strenuous language or education requirements, and by removing caps on how many PR applications can be processed. The government did not respond to our request by deadline. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
Scientists have spotted a gray whale off the coast of Massachusetts for the first time in more than 200 years. Researchers circled the area for 45 minutes taking photos. One of them said she could barely comprehend what she was seeing. Gray whales are often seen in the northern Pacific Ocean, but they disappeared from the Atlantic Ocean by the 18th century. Just 5 have been seen in the Atlantic and Mediterranean waters in the last 15 years. Scientists attribute that to global warming. The Northwest Passage, which connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, has lacked ice in recent summers, and that has allowed gray whales to pass through. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here next week.